Well, hey everybody, here I am back again doing another Flickers of Fear movie review. So, the other day, the mood kind of struck me, as it does from time to time. I kind of wanted to watch a movie from the 70s, and specifically, I wanted to watch one that was kind of, well, like kind of a forgotten kind of 70s film. One that I hadn't heard of, but had kind of heard other people talking about it, here and there. So that's how I ended up stumbling upon the movie Frightmare from 1974. Now, this is a British film. I remember seeing the cover of it like a bunch of times in video stores back in the old days, but for whatever reason, I had just never got around to watching it. So this movie is also known under a couple of other alternate titles. It's also called Once Upon a Frightmare, and it's also called Cover Up. And I will say, too, that this is not to be confused with the 1983 American slasher movie, which is also called Frightmare, which was directed by Norman Thaddeus Vane. This is a completely different movie. This movie here, the 1974 Frightmare, was written by David McGillivray and directed by Pete Walker. Now, this is the same duo that gave us the actually quite excellent 1974 exploitation thriller House of Whipcord. They also made two slashers together. They both came out in 1976. One was called House of Mortal Sin, and one was called Schizo. Now, Frightmare in particular was clearly made to capitalize on maybe horror audiences growing hunger, if you want to call it that, for like gore and cannibal movies. I don't want to say that it was just ripping off Texas Chainsaw Massacre, because this only came out, as far as I'm aware, I think this only came out like a month after Texas Chainsaw Massacre, so it's not like it was ripping it off, but it was very much like in the zeitgeist at the time. Now, the movie, British reviewers, particularly in the 1970s, were very appalled by the subject matter, but honestly, it's not a bad movie for all that, and it's pretty tame by today's standards. It is a little bit gory, but nothing that modern audiences would balk at, I will say. Now, I will admit that the movie is kind of slow and a little bit talky in the first half, and it doesn't really have any surprises. Like, there's not any great mystery to what exactly is going on. But it does have some really good acting performances, particularly by Sheila Keith, who was also in House of Whipcord and House of Mortal Sin, with the same writer and director. And also, like I said, has some good kind of gruesome set pieces, though it is like fairly restrained by modern standards. So at the beginning of the movie, we meet this young woman named Debbie, who's played by Kim Butcher. Now, her character is supposed to be 15 years old, even though clearly the actress is, in her early 20s at least, but they did that a lot. So she's at a nightclub with her biker gang friends, and she kind of starts some trouble when the bartender won't serve her because she's underage. Now, she later on, again, just to cause trouble, she lies to her boyfriend Alec and tells him, oh, the bartender called me a tart or something like that, like called her a name. And so this actually leads to Alec and the biker gang friends, like, staying after the bar closes and beating the absolute crap out of the bartender with a bike chain, like, in the parking lot, like, after shift ends. So the cops show up, like, mid-pummeling, and the gang takes off. But Debbie stays behind, like kind of in hiding. Obviously, this is for some nefarious purpose, but you don't really find out what she's up to until like later on in the movie. So we then get filled in on Debbie's kind of situation. So she lives with her older half-sister, Jackie, who's played by Deborah Fairfax. Now, their parents are ostensibly dead. Jackie is just simply at her wit's end with Debbie. It turns out this girl is just a complete delinquent and just runs around at all hours of the night doing Lord knows what, as we've just seen. So there's this big argument between the two girls after Debbie comes home that same night, and it's like 2 a.m. But it's revealed at this point that Jackie herself might have a few secrets of her own going on. Now, Debbie, even though Jackie thinks that she doesn't know this, Debbie actually knows that Jackie is also sneaking out at night. She's like, I hear you sneaking out at night, and then you're gone for a couple hours, and then you sneak back in, and you think I don't know about it, but I do. You know what I mean? So she's like, well, you can't exactly tell me what to do when you're doing pretty much the same thing. Even though I will note that obviously Jackie is older and Debbie is supposed to be a minor, so yeah, she absolutely can tell her what to do, but that's kind of the argument that the teenage girl uses anyway, as a teenager would in real life. So Jackie is just kind of like, well, obviously I'm older, but, you do kind of have a point there, you know what I mean? So she kind of just has to go about her shady business. So what this shady business entails is she takes this paper-wrapped parcel of something or other out to this kind of remote farmhouse some distance away from where they live. Now, at this farmhouse, we learn, are Jackie's very much not dead parents, whose names are Edmund and Dorothy, and they're played by Rupert Davies and Sheila Keith, respectively. Now, apparently their presence among the living is something that Jackie has kept from her half-sister Debbie all of this time. Now, Edmund, the dad, he seems like a nice man, like he seems like a sympathetic character, but Dorothy is pretty obviously batshit crazy. And by the end of this visit, like Jackie's first visit that you see in the movie, you're pretty sure you have a decent handle on what's probably inside those little packages that Jackie brings to them so often, So at some point in the story, Jackie meets and starts dating this, he's either a full psychiatrist or a psychiatry student. I think they call him doctor at one point, so I guess he is a full psychiatrist. And his name is Graham, and he's played by Paul Greenwood. Now, she initially keeps a bunch of this stuff to herself, like what's going on with her family and everything. But as they kind of get closer, she later confesses. She's like, look, I don't know what to do about Debbie. She's turning into a petty criminal, and I've tried everything, and I don't know. And then he kind of wants to help her, saying, oh, I'll counsel her and shit. And then they have a big argument because Jackie's like, well, I know her better than you do, and this isn't going to work, and I've been trying this. And Graham's kind of like, no offense, but what you've been doing has not been working because she's running around breaking laws and shit like that. So why don't you give me a go? He's like, I'll do it for free. I'll counsel her. All she needs is a little bit of talk therapy and, a listening ear and understanding, and she'll be right as rain again. Everything will be fine. So finally, she's just like, okay, fine, try it out. So Graham starts looking into the two women's background, though. And he uncovers the fact that their parents, who we have met, Edmund and Dorothy, were only very recently released from a psychiatric hospital, which they had been in for 15 years. Now, they supposedly were cured, which is why they were let out. But what ended up happening 15 years ago was that Dorothy, the mom, killed and ate 6 people back in the day. And Edmund then covered up her crimes. Now, Edmund was evidently so devoted to his wife that he faked his own mental illness so he could go into the hospital with her. So, like I said, that's some devotion right there. We also find out that little 15-year-old Debbie, actually 25-year-old Debbie, but she's supposed to be 15 in the movie, so I'm just going to go with that. She might be even more of a criminal than we thought initially, because she, at one point, shows her boyfriend Alec that she's like, hey, look at what I got. They go to this garage, and I guess it's her car. I don't know whose car it is. But she opens the trunk, and the bartender from the beginning that they had beat up, his dead body is in there. And Alec is pretty horrified by this. It's like, yeah, they beat the guy up pretty badly, but he was pretty sure the dude was still alive, when he fled the scene with his friends. And the bartender in the trunk has his eye gouged out, and he's all fucked up, and he has injuries that are clearly not consistent with being beaten by a bike chain. So obviously Debbie has got some explaining to do. And while all of that is going on, there's even more unsavory business revealed about Dorothy, who is apparently, obviously, not as cured of her mental illness as everybody thought she was, like the doctors that let her out of the hospital. What she's been doing for some time is luring these kind of lonely young women who don't have any personal connections out to the farm, and she does tarot readings on them. She's like a medium, you know what I mean? And she does tarot readings. So that's how she gets them to come out there, and that's how she gets information out of them. It's like, oh, well, I see that your husband left you, and you're single, and you don't have any, and your parents are dead, and blah, blah. So that's how she knows who she can safely victimized because they don't have anybody around to ask about them. So, so she's luring them out there, killing them, and presumably eating them, although they never show her doing that. They do specifically say that she's a cannibal, but I thought it was kind of strange that they never showed her actually doing that. Maybe that was just like a bridge too far to go for the filmmakers, and they're just like, we can't exactly show that, it would get cut out. Maybe that's what it is, but they don't even really like suggest it to any great degree, which I thought was kind of strange. Like, they do show her kind of like drilling into, like, you don't see it drilling into the head like in the Driller Killer, but I mean, you kind of see her doing that and then blood splattering and stuff. That's about as gory as it gets, pretty much. So we also find out that the little packages that Jackie has been bringing to her parents' house all this time actually contained animal brains that she got from a butcher shop that she was trying to pass off to Dorothy as human brains, because she thought, if I pretend that I'm actually killing people and bringing her human brains, then she won't murder anybody. That was what the logic was. And I was just kind of like, maybe not such a good plan. It's not working. Not whatsoever. Now, Edmund actually hadn't realized that his wife had relapsed, if you want to call it that. But when he finally gets on the clue bus, he very sadly agrees that he's going to cover up her crimes again. Because, like I said, he's very devoted to her, and he's upset that she's doing this stuff. She's very upset. But he's like, oh, well, I don't want her to go back to the hospital if I can't go. And it's like, so I'm just going to pretend it didn't happen, and I'm just going to help you cover it up, which, not great. So at the kind of climax of the movie, several things happen at once. We actually find out that Debbie, the 15-year-old, has known that her parents were alive this whole entire time. Because, like I said, remember how Jackie was saying it's like, you were under the impression that Jackie had been telling Debbie that the parents were dead and that Debbie believed that. But no, Debbie knew that they were alive the whole time. And not only that, but she has actually been going to the farm on the down low and helping her mom kill people, because she's evidently a chip off the old block, She even brings her boyfriend, Alec, out to the farmhouse for Dorothy to munch on. And she just kind of just stands there and watches very dispassionately as Dorothy just, like, stabs the absolute shit out of him with a pitchfork. So there's that. Jackie, at this point, not really kind of knowing what's going on, but not realizing the extent of the horror that's unfolding, she sends her psychiatrist boyfriend, Graham, out to the farmhouse, kind of like on a reconnaissance mission to see if they could figure out what's going on. He goes out there like under a false identity, saying he's going to go and get a tarot reading and all this other stuff. But they figure out who he is pretty quickly, not least because Debbie is there and she knows him. So she's just like, yeah, nice try, bud. So, you know what I mean? So by the time Jackie gets out there, hate to say, but Dorothy and Debbie are killing the hell out of him too. So he also gets killed. Everybody gets killed in this, pretty much. Now, at the end, Edmund, the dad, he actually ends up siding with Dorothy and Debbie, because they've decided, well, they have to kill Jackie because she knows too much about what's going on. And I guess because Jackie is only like a half sister and Debbie is like because Debbie is the daughter of Edmund and Dorothy, whereas Jackie she might have been like, she might have been Dorothy's daughter from a previous marriage or something like that. So I guess Edmund doesn't feel the same way toward her. So she's like, if you have to pick between the two, it's like, would you pick the normal one or the murderous one? But it's like, well, you're not biologically mine, so fuck you. Yeah, it was just kind of that. So he decides that, well, yeah, I guess Jackie does have to get killed. So pretty much the last scene of the film is you kind of freeze frame on his really conflicted, but I mean, he does feel bad about it, but he looks really like conflicted. And then Jackie's like screaming in the background as Debbie and Dorothy are like closing in on her with the sharp implements and stuff like that. So yeah, like I said, pretty much everybody dies. I mean, it's a very dark ending for sure, but this is a British movie that we're talking about, so they're all about the downer endings, and this absolutely does have one. So Frightmare, it's not like a lost classic or anything like that, but it is a pretty enjoyable exploitation flick, which actually has like a lot better acting than you'd usually see in this kind of thing. Has some moderately gruesome scenes, a pretty lurid premise, which I kind of liked. Sheila Keith, who played Dorothy, she's particularly great. She's completely deranged and also kind of like passive aggressive, and I thought that was really it was a really good performance. I also thought Rupert Davies was really good as like Edmund. He was kind of like a sympathetic father figure, but he nonetheless, because of his love for his wife, like just he just facilitated like all of these monstrous things. Like he covered up all of her crimes, just let her keep murdering people just because he didn't want her to go back to the hospital. And then he ends up like, you know, essentially letting them kill one of his daughters just because she knows too much about it. You know what I mean? So it's just kind of like, but he was a great character. He was like a really nuanced character. Gotta say too, the movie has a little bit of an undercurrent of kind of social commentary, I guess. It's criticizing psychiatry, I guess, because not only in the movie is, you know, Dorothy, who's a dangerous murderer and cannibal, released back into the wild after supposedly being cured at this hospital, and obviously that was not the case, but you also have the character of Graham, the psychiatrist, who is a likable character, but he's also kind of portrayed as a little bit maybe naive in his belief that Debbie could also be cured of her illness, if you want to call it that. And nobody really realizes how batshit crazy Debbie is until it's way too late. So if you're into British horror from the 1970s and you kind of want to see something that's maybe a lot gorier and kind of trashier than like a Hammer movie, but still kind of classier than what its subject matter would suggest, then, you know, give it a try. You might actually like it. I'm going to say I didn't like it as much as House of Whipcord, which I haven't reviewed, but I saw it like a while back and I remember really liking it. I'll review it one of these days. So I didn't like it as much as that, but it's still pretty entertaining. Like I said, the first half is a little bit draggy with like a lot of exposition and stuff, but I think it had enough forward momentum to like keep it entertaining pretty much all the way through. It seems like it's kind of hard to get a hold of. I thought that it was available on Amazon Prime, but it looks like that was the 1983 version, even though that was the 1983, which is a completely different movie. But I will say that if you're on YouTube here, there is a channel that has a lot of HD uploads of like full 70s movies, and if you search around, you don't really have to search around all that much. I think it's one of the first things that comes up in the search. If you put in Frightmare 1974, then you will find it on there, and that's where I watched it. So you can watch it for free until it's taken down, because like I said, it's kind of hard to get hold of on any legitimate streaming services for whatever reason. But yeah, so this was a decent movie. If you've seen it, let me know in the comments, and that will do it for this Flickers of Fear. I'll see you guys again on the next one. Bye.